Hello Summoners and welcome back to another ProGuides patch rundown. My name is Christoph and today I'll be going over all the changes that were made in patch 9.17. I'll cover all the details including a tier list for each role that was made by our challenger analysts and partnered pro players. There were a ton of changes this patch which raised a lot of questions. Are the new Star Guardian skins coming out? Will Pantheon jungle become broken now? Is Kiana going to be gutted? Don't worry, we got you guys covered and we'll answer all these questions in this video. But remember, since the patch just hit the live servers, please do keep in mind that these tier lists are purely predictions. We encourage all our viewers to comment on our list and say if you agree or disagree with us on specific champion placements. And also as a reminder, we'll be updating our tier list 1 week from now, where we use fresh stats to give you guys the best and most accurate tier lists available. So these tier lists help you guys understand the meta, but if you guys want to take your gameplay to the next level, then check out ProGuides using the description link below. You guys can find a great challenger coach right now to help you win more games. Go check it out, you guys won't be disappointed. You don't want to miss this because all your friends will just be like, wow, how did you get so good at League? Alright, so let's jump right into the video. To kick things off, let's go over a few of the new skins that are being released in patch 9.17. Firstly, we got another brand new Ahri skin called Elderwood Ahri. Following the same skin line is Elderwood Nocturne, and we'll finish off the trio with Elderwood Vhagar. Next up, we got Infernal Galio, Infernal Shen, and lastly, Infernal Varus. Both these skin lines look amazing, and I cannot wait to try them out. Alright, so now on to the changes, starting with the top lane. Kael will receive a mini rework this patch, which will balance out the massive differences in her power spikes between the early game and the late game. Firstly, her passive Divine Ascent can now stack versus towers, and its bonus movement speed has been changed from 15% towards champions to 8% in all directions. However, the biggest change to her passive is going to be her ranged autos being moved to the first evolve, and her AoE attacks to the second evolve. To compensate for the earlier power spike, her first evolve range has been reduced from 550 to 525. On top of that, the Transcended evolve at level 16 will now have 50 extra range to compensate for all the other nerfs. Next up, her Q Radiant Blast will have its cast delay and cast time changed to 0.25 seconds and will now refund 50% of its mana cost if it hits an enemy champion. The missile speed of Radiant Blast has been lowered by 400 and the range has been nerfed by 50 as well. Lastly, the shred amount has been lowered from 20% to 15%, but the duration has been extended by 1 second. Kael's E, Starfire Spellblade, will have its damage change from 8 to 16% plus 1% per 100 AP to 8 to 12% plus 2% per 100 AP. On top of that, the passive AP ratio has been increased by 5% and the AD ratio has been changed from 10% total AD to 10% base AD. Lastly, Kael's ultimate Judgment will have its mana cost lowered from 100 at all ranks to 100 to 0, depending on the skill level. In addition to that, the AoE radius of this ability will be increased by 25. Although there were a lot of damage nerfs across the board, our challenger analysts believe that these Kael changes will make her better in every way. One of her biggest problems before was that she was completely useless during the early to mid game, but then becomes a 1v9 machine past level 16. This huge discrepancy in her power spikes was hurting Kael a lot because it felt like the game depended on if your team could last until you become God mode. However, with the new changes to her passive, Kael becomes much more relevant very early on in the game. Kael will be unranked in our patch 9.17 video because our analysts follow a general rule where they do not place newly reworked champions until their statistics are available. But we will make sure to place her in our updated tier list next week, so make sure to hit that sub button if you want to see that. The top lane tier list sees only a couple of minor changes in patch 9.17. Like always, sitting in the S+ tier all by himself is once again Kled. Kled has been overpowered for the past few patches and you should definitely try to play him more often in the top lane. He will net you a ton of free LP because he can beat pretty much every top laner in the game. In our S tier, we have Darius, Renekton, Jax, Riven, Vladimir, and Mordekaiser. Despite Riven's win rate being a little bit lower than before due to the nerfs made in patch 9.16, Riven remains a very powerful pick, and her win rate will recover over the 50% mark within the next few weeks. Adding 2 extra seconds to her Q during the late game has a very tiny impact on her stance in the meta due to Riven being one of the only champs to rush 40 to 45% cooldown. Jax, on the other hand, received buffs in patch 9.16 and is very, very close to hitting our S+ tier. Unlike Riven, who got her cooldown nerfed during the early game, Jax had his Q cooldown buffed during the early game. This meant that Jax can now max E second into every matchup because his Q is already at the cooldown it needs to be. If you're looking for a top laner to hard carry your teammates, then Jax is your go-to guy. Qiyana has been moved down into our B tier due to some nerfs made to her kit this patch. We'll go over all these changes later in our midsection, so make sure to stay tuned for that. Alright, on to the jungle. But before we get into the jungle, if you guys are jungle mains, we have a ton of great resources to help you out on ProGuides.com. Click the description link below and check out some of those courses. Alright, starting off with Pantheon. Pantheon recently received a complete rework, but has been a bit weaker than what the balanced team had in mind. Despite receiving numerous buffs and hotfixes, he's still been struggling across the board and was in need of some buffs. Come on, Riot, let's help our bro Pantheon out. For patch 9.17, his Q Comet Spear's tap will now have an effect similar to his previous iteration, which will crit all targets below 25% HP. On top of that, his E Aegis Assault will have its damage reduction against monsters completely removed. Not only will these changes help Pantheon in the jungle, but they'll also be extremely good for his solo laning as well. I've personally been playing a ton of Pantheon jungle recently, and I'm very excited for these changes. Pantheon will be placed in our jungle A tier this patch. The jungle tier list sees a few changes in patch 9.17. Sitting in the S+ tier all by himself is none other than, you guessed it, Kha'Zix. Kha'Zix recently received a pretty big buff on his Q, which has increased his win rate significantly. He is definitely one of the best junglers in the game right now, so make sure to add him to your champion pool. In our S tier, we have Elise, Karthus, J4, Nunu, Hecarim, and Vi. These 6 champions are really powerful picks in the meta, and you should learn a handful of these guys to win more ranked games. Our Challenger analysts recommend you pick up Nunu and Karthus, especially because their play rates are pretty low, so they'll be available to help you get those free wins. Some notable A-tier picks who are going to be very close to making that S-tier push are Evelynn, Kayn, Master Yi, Rammus, and Lee Sin. You'll likely see these 5 champions in and out of the S-tier within the next couple weeks, so make sure to keep a close eye on them. Alright, now let's run it down mid. The much-anticipated Aurelion Sol rework will finally hit the live servers in patch 9.17. His passive Center of the Universe will have its damage change from 20 to 130 to 16 to 120. In addition to that, the AP ratio for his passive has been changed from 18 to 35% to 25% flat at all ranks. Next up is Q Star Surge will have its cooldown change from 10 flat at all ranks to 11 to 7. The movement speed on this ability has been increased by 10%, and the star will now keep up with A-Sol if he is faster than the projectile. A-Sol's W Celestial Expansion will see the biggest change and will now expand for 3 seconds, granting him 40% movement speed, decaying over 1.5 seconds. The star will be a lot faster now, but they will automatically retract after the 3 seconds are up. The cooldown for his W has been changed to 8 to 2 seconds, and the mana cost has been increased from 40 to 30 per second to 70 to 110. And lastly, his E Comet of Legend will have its movement speed completely removed, but the range of this ability has been increased from 3,000 to 7,000 to 5,500 to 7,500. In addition, the cooldown has been increased by 20 seconds during the early game, and the speed of which he travels will now scale depending on the skill level. Unlike the Kael mini rework, the community does not seem to like the direction Aurelion Sol is going towards. His playstyle has been shifted too much from a DPS roam mage to a complete burst mage. Although there are some good parts about these changes, such as his Q and E, the biggest issue that the community has is towards his W. At first, it might seem interesting and fun, but once you start playing him some more, you'll realize how bad the changes feel and likely give up on A-Sol. Aurelion Sol will be unranked in our patch 9.17 tier list, because you guys know the rule about newly reworked champs. So, we're going to put him into our updated tier list next week, so make sure to hit that sub button if you want to see it. Galio recently received a gigantic nerf which removed his strongest mechanic, the Taunt Flash. Ever since these changes, Galio has been struggling in the meta and is one of the weakest champions in the game. You guys already knew this. We've been saying it for the past month. His play rate has gotten so low that we don't even have enough data to place him in any of our tier lists anymore. Rip Galio. In patch 9.17, Galio will receive a few buffs aimed towards increasing his strength as a mid laner. Wow! Firstly, his mana regen has been increased to 9.5, and his Q, Winds of War, will have its cooldown lowered from 14 to 10 to 12 to 10. Next up is his W, Shield of Durand, which will have its minimum damage increased from 10 to 50 to 20 to 80, and the max damage increased from 30 to 150 to 60 to 240. Although these damage buffs do feel nice, Galio will continue to struggle, and sadly, he will be unranked in our mid lane tier list. Alright, on to Nico. Nico will receive a small change this patch, which will now enable her to cancel her disguise. That's it for Nico. Alright, on to Qiyana. Qiyana has been one of the strongest mid laners in the game due to her powerful ultimate and high burst from her combos. In order to put Qiyana in check, the balanced team are looking to nerf several parts of her kit this patch. Firstly, her E, Audacity, will have its damage lowered from 70 to 210 to 60 to 200. Next up, her R, Supreme Display of Talent, will have its cooldown nerf from 120 to 80 seconds to 120 flat at all ranks. These nerfs are going to hurt her stance in the meta, but she's still a decent pick this patch. Qiyana will be placed in our mid lane A tier. Ryze will receive one simple buff this patch, which will increase his base magic resist from 30 to 34. Although this change seems rather minor, it's actually going to be quite impactful, especially into AP matchups. Combine the 4 extra MR with your magic resist rune and Merc Treads, and then you really got a tanky mid laner. Ryze will be placed in our mid lane B tier this patch. The mid lane tier list sees a few changes in patch 9.17. In our S+ tier, again, is the one and only Fizz. Fizz received a rework on his passive not too long ago, and it's boosted his win rate into our S+ tier. He is definitely one of the best, if not the best champion in the mid lane right now, and you should add him to your champion pool immediately. In our S tier, we have Talon, Vladimir, Zed, Ahri, Malzahar, and Katarina. These champions shouldn't come as much of a surprise as they've been in our S tier recently. Some notable A tier picks we recommend you try out are Qiyana, Diana, Zoe, and Yasuo. These 4 champions are super powerful right now and are really close to pushing into the S tier. Yasuo has even managed to hit a 50% win rate in Korea with an 11% pick rate, which is insane for a mechanically intense champion. Generally, champs like Yasuo will have a 45 to 47% win rate in solo queue due to their high skill cap, so reaching 50% is quite a good goal. Aatrox and Akali are confirmed to be nerfed in patch 9.18, so if you want to hop on the hype train, then you better do it soon before they get nerfed into the ground. Alright, now let's move on to ADCs. Kalista has been struggling quite a bit in the recent meta and is looking to receive some love in patch 9.17. Her base AD has been increased by 2, her base mana increased to 250, and her mana per level has been buffed by 10. These changes are very welcomed and will help Kalista a ton during her awful laning phase. The extra AD and mana will allow her to spam poke more often, and she'll be placed in our AD carry C tier this patch. Lucian has held a solid stance in the meta and is looking to receive a small buff this patch. His base AD has been increased from 61 to 64, which is actually a huge amount. It pretty much gives him a free absolute focus rune at level 1 and 2, so it'll make his all-ins extremely powerful. It's hard to say if this change alone will bring Lucian into the S tier, but we'll keep an eye on him and let you know in our mid-patch update. The ADC tier list remains pretty similar to the one we had previously. In our S+ tier, we have 2 members who are Jinx and Draven. These 2 champions are extremely powerful right now, especially if you're under Diamond 4, so make sure to add them to your champion pool. In our S tier, we have Kai'Sa, Vayne, Xayah, Caitlyn, and Jhin. Much like Yasuo, Kai'Sa has also hit a 50% win rate in the Korean server recently, which is insanely good for high skill cap champions. A few notable A tier picks for this patch are going to be Ashe and Lucian. Ashe is actually one of the most underrated champions in the game right now and deserves a bit of recognition. Her Triforce and Essence Reaver build is actually very strong, so try that out in a normal game and let us know how that goes down below. Alright, now on to supports. Although the Western regions haven't found as much success with Leona recently, the Eastern regions have been dominating solo queue with her. In the Korean server, Leona is currently right behind Nautilus, Pyke, and Thresh on their tier lists and is a very powerful pick in the right hands. For patch 9.17, Leona will receive a buff to her Q, Shield of Daybreak, which will have its cooldown lowered from 6 seconds to 5 seconds. Although this buff seems extremely minor, do not be fooled by this. Having the 1 second reduction is actually huge because it'll allow her to perma CC you. With 45% cooldown, she can lock you up with Q and then R and then E, and then have her Q back up again. This is a 4-second CC combo, aka about 10% of a Morgana binding, so get those QSSs ready. Leona will be placed in our S tier this patch. Alright, and lastly for supports, we have Zyra. Zyra is receiving a few buffs in patch 9.17, which are focused around her ultimate, Stranglethorns. Stranglethorns will have its mana cost change from 100 to 140 to 100 at all ranks, and the cooldown on this ability has been buffed from 130 to 110 seconds to 110 to 90 seconds. These are some pretty big buffs for Zyra support, so you should expect to see her more often. Zyra will be placed in our support A tier this patch. The support tier list remains very similar to the one we had in our last patch. In our S+ tier, we have Pyke, Thresh, and Nautilus. These three supports are by far the best in the game, and Pyke stands a little bit above the other two. The gold generation from his ultimate has made him a solo queue monster, so make sure to abuse him while you still can. In our S tier, we have Nami, Janna, Morgana, Leona, Bard, and Blitzcrank. If you're looking to pick up a bunch of strong supports, then our analysts are highly recommending these 6. That's it for our patch 9.17 rundown video. If you enjoyed watching this video, then please leave a like, comment, and sub to our channel to be notified for our next one. Make sure you guys check out our website for in-depth content and guides that were made by your favorite pro players. The second part of our meta-analysis video will be available next week, which will give you guys the most accurate tier list available using fresh stats. That's it for the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Good luck in your next few games, and I'll see you on the Rift.